Welcome to the ICMR online prescribing skill course. I am Dr. Purna Ganga Devi from NIRT here to present the elective module on prescription of anti-tuberculous drugs. After watching this video, you are requested to answer 5 MCQs in the assignment section and are requested to give your feedback at the end of this module. This slide lists out the learning objectives of this module. At the end of this module, the learner shall be able to understand the guidelines for the treatment of pulmonary, extrapulmonary and drug-resistant TB, to prescribe appropriate therapy based on the diagnosis and patient factors, to identify and manage the patients in the occurrence of adverse effects, to understand about the anti-TB drug interactions, and to communicate the key information needed to the patient. The prioritized conditions for this module are given here. There are more than 17 competencies listed in the latest MCA curriculum related to either the diagnosis or clinical features or the management of TB infections. The focus of this module is to help you learn the treatment of common conditions encountered in routine clinical practice, namely management of pulmonary TB as per the guidelines, tuberculosis in children, extrapulmonary tuberculosis, drug-drug interactions, adverse effects of anti-TB drugs. The outline of this module is given here. Why is this topic important? The specific learning objectives of this module. The case study of drug-sensitive TB, adverse drug reaction, extrapulmonary TB, TB in children and drug-resistant TB. What are the management of various forms of TB and the points to remember, do's and don'ts. Why is this topic important? As per the Global TB Report 2019, the estimated incidence of TB in India was approximately 26,90,000. TB bacteria spreads through the air from one person to another. TB disease in the lungs can be infectious. It is very important that people who have TB disease are treated, finish the course and take the drugs exactly as prescribed. If they do not take the drugs correctly, the TB bacteria that are still alive may become resistant to those drugs. TB that is resistant to drugs is harder and more expensive to treat. For this to be fruitful, an update on TB for clinicians is critical today. This course is intended for use as a reference manual for clinicians caring for persons with or at high risk for TB disease or infection. The goal of the core curriculum is to provide the reader with information about TB standards of care and the new guidelines and developments in the modern management of TB. Upon completion of this educational activity, the reader should possess a clear working knowledge of the treatment and prevention of TB infection and disease. Consider the case presented. A 26 years old lady residing with her husband and 2 children, one of them aged 3 years, presented to the clinic with the complaints of cough for more than a week, low-grade fever for a week on and off and not resolving with tablet paracetamol, reduced appetite and loss of weight for more than a month. On history taking, there was no past history of TB treatment and her complete blood count showed increased WBC and lymphocytes. Her HIV testing was reported as negative and the chest X-ray taken showed infiltrates. Sputum examination for AFB was 3+ and the GeneXpert result showed Mycobacterium tuberculosis but no resistance to rifampicin. GeneXpert testing shows Mycobacterium tuberculosis detected and no resistance to rifampicin. The diagnosis here is sputum smear positive, drug sensitive pulmonary TB. The definitive diagnosis for this case is sputum smear positive, drug sensitive pulmonary TB, as the sputum for AFB is positive and there is no resistance to rifampicin. Other history to be noted in this case includes young lady in the reproductive age group, household contacts with children, one age less than 6 years. This slide lists the goals of TB treatment as per the guidelines. The goals of TB treatment are to decrease the case fatality and morbidity by ensuring relapse-free cure, to minimize and prevent development of drug resistance, to render patient non-infectious, break the chain of transmission and to decrease the pool of infection. Let us have a brief discussion on treating a case of sputum positive, drug sensitive TB patient. TB is a notifiable disease. The treatment is available free of cost at all government facilities. To treat a sputum positive patient, a daily regimen of anti-tuberculous drugs are preferred instead of thrice weekly dosing. All new drug sensitive TB patients should receive standard treatment regimen that includes 2 months of drugs isoniazid, rifampicin, pyrazinamide and ethambutol in the intensive phase, and the continuation phase should consist of 3 drugs isoniazid, rifampicin and ethambutol, which is given for at least 4 months. The daily regimen should be prescribed in dosages depending on the patient's body weight. Patients who are at risk of peripheral neuropathy, such as those with malnutrition, chronic alcohol dependence, HIV infection, pregnancy, breastfeeding, renal failure or diabetes, should additionally receive pyridoxine 10 mg daily. Response and improvement to therapy may be assessed clinically, which includes improvement on chest symptoms, increase in weight, etc., or radiologically, regression of infiltrates, decrease in the size of cavity, and by sputum examination, such as decrease in the sputum grading or negative sputum. The coming slide shows the recommended doses of anti-TB drugs and the dosages based on the weight bands for both the adults and children. Continuation of the case scenario. This scenario deals with the adverse effects that occur in patients on anti-TB drugs. The lady was started on standard 4-drug therapy. Her sputum smear status at the end of 2nd and 6th month were negative. During the course of treatment, at the end of 2nd week, the lady complained of vomiting, loss of appetite and dark colored urine. Although her baseline lab values were normal, at the time of adverse effect, her blood results revealed elevated liver enzymes and bilirubin levels. The coming slides briefs about the adverse effects of ATT and how to manage them appropriately. The adverse effects of the TB drugs and their possible interactions are outlined in this table. Dealing with gastrointestinal symptoms. The gastrointestinal symptoms include nausea, vomiting or abdominal pain. Usually this is due to the bulk of the TB drugs. When a patient complains of nausea with or without vomiting, the patient will be reassured initially. If the symptoms persist or increases, the TB drugs will be administered 1 hour after 1 tablet of domperidone for 1 week. If the symptoms still persist despite the antiemetic, a proton pump inhibitor such as omeprazole 10 mg or H2 receptor inhibitor ranitidine will be given in addition to 1 tablet of domperidone for a period of 1 week. If the symptoms persist or increases, then the TB drugs will be given spaced out over a period of 1 hour with prior antiemetic. If the symptoms still persist or becomes worse, drugs will be temporarily withheld and a urine specimen will be examined for bile pigments to rule out hepatitis. If the test result is negative and if symptoms persist despite the above measures, drug identification will be done and necessary action will be taken appropriately. Neurological symptoms. During the course of treatment, when a patient complains of giddiness, he or she will be reassured that the symptoms is likely to decrease with continuing therapy and a B-complex tablet may be prescribed. Blood sugar will be done if the patient still complains of giddiness to rule out hypoglycemia. If hypoglycemia, that is blood sugar less than 50 mg per deciliter is noticed, further management will be planned accordingly. Drug identification exercise will be carried out if the symptoms worsen further and in special circumstances, giving the treatment at night provided that complaints can be reasonably ensured can be considered. If the patient complains of symptoms suggestive of peripheral neuropathy such as pins and needle sensation, numbness or pain in the hands or feet with or without signs, pyridoxine 20 mg once a day will be prescribed for 1 week and the patient will be reviewed later. If there is no improvement, then the dose of pyridoxine will be increased to 20 mg per BD. If there is no improvement, then the dose of pyridoxine will be increased to 20 mg BD or 50 mg BD for a period of 2 weeks with weekly review. If there is no improvement or worsening, then isoniazid will be terminated and it will be substituted with streptomycin 0.75 gram. If a patient develops a seizure All drugs will be withheld immediately and the patient will be referred to a neurologist for opinion, and further management will be based on the neurologist's opinion and the investigation results. So, how do we decide with elevated blood parameters suggestive of hepatitis? First, rule out other causes of hepatitis using viral markers, doing ultrasound abdomen. If the other results are normal and with an elevated liver parameters such as bilirubin more than 1.5 milligram and SGOT or SGPT more than 5 times the upper normal limit, a drug induced hepatitis should be considered, and in that case streptomycin, ethambutol and a fluoroquinolone daily has to be prescribed and the other TB drugs has to be withheld temporarily. The liver function test should be done periodically, and once the liver function parameters return to normal, the other hepatotoxic TB drugs can be restarted. The order of the re-challenge is as follows. Start the patient with rifampicin for approximately 1 week, and if there is no increase in liver function test, then add INH for approximately 1 week. If still there is no increase in liver function test, then add pyrazinamide and recheck the labs approximately after 1 week. If the symptoms recur or the liver function test increases, the last drug that has been added should be stopped and the challenge should continue with the next drug. Consider the patients complaining of skin reactions like itching and rashes after initiation of anti-TB drugs. The patient should be treated symptomatically with antihistamines and skin moisturizing creams along with ATT. If severe cutaneous reactions occur, all the anti-TB drugs has to be stopped and a dermatologist's opinion should be obtained. Once the reactions are resolved, re-challenge the drugs one by one in the order of INH, rifampicin and pyrazinamide. Discussion regarding a case scenario of arthralgia. Patients with the complaints of joint pain will be examined for inflammation, swelling, tenderness or limitation of movement in the joints involved. Initially, they will be prescribed tablet paracetamol 500 mg TDS along with local application for a week. On review, if there is no improvement or there is exacerbation of the condition, the dose of tablet paracetamol will be increased to 1000 mg or 1 gram TDS for a week. If the arthralgia still persists or it becomes worse, tablet diclofenac sodium BD can be prescribed. If there is no improvement after 1 week or if the arthralgia worsens, the dosage of pyrazinamide will be reduced or the drug can be withheld temporarily. Once the arthralgia subsides, the patient can be restarted on pyrazinamide. In case of patients with renal dysfunction on ATT, the following points are to be considered while on treatment. The drugs INH and rifampicin are eliminated by biliary excretion, so no change in dosing of ATT is necessary. Significant renal excretion of ethambutol and metabolites of pyrazinamide occur, and hence the doses of these drugs should be adjusted. Few other drugs that need dose adjustment in case of renal dysfunction includes quinolones, PAS and cycloserine. The case scenario continues. The lady was treated for drug-induced hepatitis, and once her LFT returned back to normal, she was resumed back on standard drugs. Meanwhile, her husband and children were screened for TB. The 3-year-old child had no TB and was started on chemoprophylaxis. This scenario highlights the need to consider household contact investigation and TB preventive therapy. TB contacts are people who have close contacts with patients with infectious TB. As they are at high risk for infection, TB contacts should be investigated systematically and actively for TB infection and disease. Such interventions are called tuberculosis contact investigation. They contribute to early identification of active TB, thus decreasing its severity and reducing the transmission of Mycobacterium tuberculosis to others, and identification of latent TB infection to allow the preventive measures. Children less than 6 years of age who are household or close contacts of people with TB and who after an appropriate evaluation are found not to have TB disease should be given 10 mg per kg body weight of INH, that is INH preventive therapy for a period of 6 months. Preventive therapy for young children with TB infection who have not yet developed TB disease will greatly reduce the likelihood of TB disease developing during childhood. Few points on TB infection testing strategies. Interferon gamma release assays are whole blood tests that aid in diagnosing Mycobacterium tuberculosis infection. They do not help to differentiate the latent TB infection from tuberculosis disease. As with the tuberculin skin test, TSTs, IGRA should be used as an aid in diagnosing infection with Mycobacterium tuberculosis. There is limited data on the use of IGRAs for children younger than 5 years of age, persons recently exposed to Mycobacterium tuberculosis, immunocompromised individuals, and serial testing. The World Health Organization had issued a strong recommendation against the use of currently available commercial serological tests for the diagnosis of TB disease. Continuation of the case scenario. The 8-year-old child had no chest symptoms but was referred to the TB clinic because of a 22 mm positive Mantoux test and a possible tuberculosis contact. On examination, there was enlarged, mobile and tender cervical lymph nodes. The child underwent a surgical biopsy of a cervical lymph node which showed AFB bacilli. This shows the possibility of TB lymph node, a form of extrapulmonary TB. The various extrapulmonary TB sites are depicted in this figure. Extrapulmonary TB includes lymphadenitis, often cervical, pleuritis, meningitis, abdominal TB which includes peritonitis, skeletal TB such as Pott's disease of the spine, genitourinary or the renal TB. Miliary TB results from the hepatogenous spread of Mycobacterium tuberculosis and it affects both pulmonary and extrapulmonary sites. Approximately 10% of all TB cases have both pulmonary and extrapulmonary TB and an additional 20% have extrapulmonary TB without pulmonary involvement. HIV infected patients, especially with low CD counts, have higher rates of extrapulmonary TB. Children are more likely to have extrapulmonary TB than the adults. In general, extrapulmonary TB is more difficult to diagnose than the pulmonary TB and it often requires invasive procedures to obtain the tissue and or fluid specimens. Besides the possible fever and weight loss symptoms, the signs and symptoms of extrapulmonary TB often relate specifically to the affected organ system. The treatment for extrapulmonary forms of TB is the same as for the pulmonary TB. However, the duration of continuation phase may be extended by 3 to 6 months in special situations like TB meningitis, bone and joint TB, spinal TB with neurological involvement. Unless drug resistance is suspected, adjuvant corticosteroid treatment is recommended for TB meningitis and pericarditis. Let us look into few points to be kept in mind while planning treatment for a case of TB in children. Some children are at greater risk for getting TB than others and these include a child that lives in the same household as a person who had been recently diagnosed with smear positive TB, a child less than 6 years old, a child with HIV infection, a child with severe malnutrition. We should make every effort to confirm the diagnosis of TB microbiologically before starting on treatment in children. This is quite difficult as children are less likely to have obvious symptoms of TB and samples such as sputum are more difficult to collect from young children. Even when sputum can be collected, it may have very few bacteria in it. Paucibacillary smear negative disease are more common in children. Children develop extrapulmonary TB more often than do the adults. Severe and disseminated type of TB such as TB meningitis and miliary TB occur especially in young children less than 3 years old. Treatment outcomes in children are generally good even in the HIV infected children provided the treatment is started promptly. Children generally tolerate the anti-TB drugs better than the adults. The case history continues. The husband had a chest X-ray which revealed extensive bilateral disease. The sputum specimens resulted in positive acid-fast bacilli with more than 10 organisms per high power field. He was diagnosed with active pulmonary TB, and further evaluation revealed a social history that included previous intravenous drug use, cigarette and alcohol use. This speaks the importance of treatment adherence for successful completion of ATT. Before working out the plan for TB treatment initiation, certain history taking is very important. That includes personal habits, working hours and the treatment provided. We should elicit the social history that pose as a potential barriers to treatment completion and counsel them appropriately. The patient should be advised to skip tobacco in all forms and not to drink alcohol, as it increases the risk of liver damage from some of the drugs used to treat TB. It is important to remember that DOT is the standard of care for all patients diagnosed with TB disease to ensure adherence. DOTS, directly observed treatment short course, is the most effective strategy available for controlling the TB epidemic today. Directly observed treatment, that is watching the patients taking their medications, is essential at least during the intensive phase of treatment, that is during the first 2 months of treatment, to ensure that the drugs are taken in the right combination and for the appropriate duration. With direct observation of treatment, the patient doesn't bear the sole responsibility of adhering to treatment. Healthcare workers, public health officials, governments and communities must all share the responsibility and provide a range of support services patients need to continue and complete the treatment. Continuation of the case history. While obtaining the patient history, he disclosed that he was previously treated for TB but does not recall the treatment duration or regimen. His drug sensitivity testing revealed resistance to rifampicin. This slide opens up the discussion for drug resistant TB. We have to suspect drug resistant TB in the following circumstances. TB patients who are close contacts of MDR TB patients, patients who had failed treatment with first line anti-TB drugs, patients whose follow-up sputum was positive during the treatment with first line drugs, who have previous history of anti-TB treatment, and TB patients with HIV co-infection. The Gene Expert test is a molecular test for TB. The Gene Expert diagnoses TB by detecting the presence of TB bacteria as well as testing for resistance to the drug rifampicin. The WHO TB statistics for India for the year 2018 gives an estimated incidence figure of 130,000 drug-resistant TB cases. MDR TB and XDR TB both take substantially longer time to treat than ordinary drug-susceptible TB, and it also requires the use of second-line anti-TB drugs, which are more expensive and have more side effects than the first-line drugs used for drug-sensitive TB. Few points to ponder upon in treating drug-resistant TB. When TB disease is confirmed for a patient, the drug sensitivity testing should be done before the start of treatment. The patient should be started on anti-TB drugs based on his or her sensitivity pattern. Intensive phase in the drug-resistant TB treatment should be given for at least 6 months as per the conventional MDR TB regimen, and the treatment should be changed to continuation phase if the 4th or 5th month culture result is negative. Usually, the recommended duration for continuation phase is 18 months. Summary and take-home messages. What are the do's and don'ts in TB disease management? Finally, it is worth noting some common points to be followed for all the TB disease cases. These aim towards promoting rational therapy, avoiding harm to patients due to irrational therapy, and in limiting the emergence of resistance. Take-home messages in prescribing anti-TB drugs. We should elicit the social history, the previous treatment history. HIV screening has to be done. Baseline lab test has to be done before the initiation of treatment. We have to look into the drug sensitivity testing report. We have to look for adverse drug reactions and any drug interactions once the patient is started on treatment. We have to educate the patient on TB infection control. Education should include instructions on cough ethic, proper disposal of sputum. Nutritional counseling has to be given The patient should be advised to take protein-rich diet. All close contacts, especially the household contacts, should be screened for TB. We should avoid treating patients empirically. We shouldn't prescribe anti-TB drugs without drug resistance testing report. We should avoid prescribing inappropriate TB regimens, and we shouldn't supply the drugs without treatment monitoring. This slide includes the references for further reading. I like to thank the contributors, external experts and reviewers for this module. Thank you for watching this video. Hope you are ready to attempt the MCQ in the assignment section. Thank you and happy learning.